Hello, everybody. Welcome to Little Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like. Trying to hit 50k subs, so that subscription would be much appreciated. Also, hype the video if you are on mobile, as that is the best way to make it do better in the algorithm. If you would like to participate in these Discord hot takes videos, the best way, or the only way to do that, would be by joining our Patreon. You can do that for $3 a month, or there is a one-time $24 payment. So for $2 a month for the full year, whichever option you go with, you get access to this Discord. Lots of like-minded basketball fans, people who just love talking about the game without a lot of the toxicity that is typically in public NBA discussion. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this. From Pete the Weapon, there is little to no evidence that throwing a bunch of older, slightly washed all-stars equates to championship success. Most of the oldest championship teams are either dynasties or outlier examples of heavy depth and defense, but there is no example of a team winning a championship with the format of the 25-26 Clippers. My point being there is no reason to do all of this other than to sell tickets and keep hope alive, but everyone should be seeing right through it. It's almost always a sad desperation move. I think a big part of the reason that it happens isn't necessarily sad or desperate, even though it's still definitely a little bit those things. However, I would say there is also just like a cultural element to it where like older players want to play with older players, younger players tend to want to play with younger players. Like, I think a lot of the time we see teams that we call like retirement homes. It's because they generally like to play with guys who are closer to their age. Like in normal day-to-day life, how much does a 35-year-old have in common with a 21-year-old? Not that much. How many 35-year-olds want to be hanging out with 21-year-olds and vice versa? Not that much. So for that reason, I think that's just a big reason why the Clippers all came together like they did. Like, yeah, we're a bunch of old 30-somethings. We like hanging out with people our own age, you know? Not that all of these decisions are just based on the power of friendship and all that, but like, I do think that is a pretty pervasive factor. But what you're saying here about like, yeah, like the older championship teams are like the dynasty on the tail end, like the 22 Warriors or the 1998 Chicago Bulls. The 2014 Spurs would be another good example, but even in the case of the Spurs and the Warriors, they still had some younger players on that team that played a big part, like Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, and Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green. So yeah, it's specifically putting together a roster of old dudes when they're already old, and it's not just a roster that's been together for 5 years and now they're old. That's just definitely not the same. From STD Lover, I don't think that the GOAT will ever be someone that isn't from the US. I personally don't believe this, but I honestly think that Americans, not all of them, but majority, and mainly media members, will never acknowledge a foreign player to be the GOAT, no matter how many accolades they have, unless they have an insane amount of rings and break all records, LMAO. But that's why I've never bought Wemby being considered the GOAT once he retires. He will never get the recognition in the US that he will deserve. The perfect example of this is media trying to get Ant to be the face of the league when we have an 8'2" demigod alien playing in San Antonio. But no, because he's French, he won't be the face of the league. You can say the perception won't be that someone is the GOAT because they're not from the US, but like, frankly, who really cares what the perception is? If we know it's just coming from a place of strictly disliking non-American born players, then yeah, that's not an irrelevant part of the conversation. To me, this reads as like, I'm trying to think, man, I have a crazy thing to compare this to, and I really don't know that I should. Like this, to me, it feels like capitulation to conservative framing. Like when people go like, oh, we shouldn't have named it Black Lives Matter because conservatives can spin that as being like, what, you don't care about all lives? But like, if someone's going to inherently spin something in some way that is inherently unfair, then I don't think you should bother to do the work to dance around what they might perceive it as if it's just wholly based in stupidity and ignorance. Like, Like, I don't think that we should be like, oh no, Wemby can't be the GOAT, because a lot of people wouldn't say he is. The fuck? Why does that really matter? Like, does it actually matter? When anyone with any level of reason discusses who the GOAT would be, if it is Wemby 25 years from now, then I really don't fucking care. If there are people who won't give him credit because he's American, then not American, then I don't care what those people think. That's the way that I would put that. And you don't have to be the face of the league to be the GOAT. Conveniently, the top two players, the only two players who I think have a legitimate argument for being the GOAT, were the faces of the league. But I think you could rank Tim Duncan as high as third all time if you really wanted to, and his ass was not the face of the league, so who fucking cares? I'm from Brisco. Too many teams rebuild on purely just getting the star players and not actually building a winning culture. The thing is, it's kind of a very difficult balance to hit. Like, a point that I've seen some people make about the Indiana Pacers is that, like, even when Tyrese Halliburton comes back next year, and even if they do get a pretty decent pick in this upcoming draft, there is a reasonable chance that just losing in the way that they have so much will result in, like, the culture that got them to the finals last year more or less being dissolved. I don't know if that's something that can happen just over the course of one bad season, but it's definitely not ideal. But it's hard to build a winning culture if you don't first have the star players, because what you don't want to do, it's worked out for the Indiana Pacers are actually a great example of a team that's just like, yeah, we're going to be perpetually competitive and hopefully it'll work out. I can't be like, no, that doesn't work. It does in some instances, but you need to have like a really, really well-ran organization, which even though the Pacers haven't won a championship, for a small market team, they are an exceptionally ran team. I don't know. It's just hard to do both of those things at the same time, because if you're developing a winning culture, then you are winning games, which means you are not getting a high lottery pick, which means you're not getting star players, which means you're not winning games. Like, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, and regardless of which one you go with, you're probably going to have to get one or the other after the fact. It's hard to do both at the same time, unless you just coincidentally, like, you're not winning, but you're like still a 35-win competitive team, and then your team jumps up high in the lottery. Like, that's really the only way to do it. I would say that's akin to like the Derrick Rose going to the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls were like a perpetual 30-something win team for like a couple of years before he got there, jumped super high in the lottery, and now it's like, yeah, he's a superstar prospect, but also we have a foundation of a winning team here. So it was pretty easy to pick it up from there and immediately start being a winning team. But yeah, like I said, it's just a very difficult balance to hit. From Reeves' strongest soldier, Austin Reeves is a top 3 shooting guard in the league right now. I mean, I wouldn't say he's played better than Donovan Mitchell and even Anthony Edwards. But after that, Devin Booker's been good this year, but his numbers haven't really done anything to pop. His 3-point percentage is actually quite bad. So yeah, I don't know. From Nico Harrison, Draymond Green is the most underrated active player in all-time rankings. He was the second best player on a team that won 73 games, and he is arguably the smartest defender of all time. Yeah, 100%. I'm working on a video about Draymond Green because, oh boy, he is the litmus test for if you know ball or not. The litmus test is Draymond Green. If you think Draymond Green is just a role player, if you think Draymond Green was never a top 20 player in the NBA, then I think you just are way too focused on the scoring aspect of the game. Like, Draymond Green is arguably the best defensive player of his generation. He worked well offensively, all things considered, because of his playmaking ability, which is not just because he's passing to Steph and Clay. It's not that simple. It's a dramatic oversimplification. And the most frustrating thing to me that is directly indicative of the scoring bias is that people think that Klay Thompson was better than Draymond Green. He was not. Draymond Green's defense is so much more important to the success of the Warriors than Klay Thompson's 3-point shooting and his pretty damn solid defense. Like, Draymond Green is to modern defense what Stephen Curry is to modern NBA offense. And to me, it is very, very indicative of how much we care more about offense that Stephen Curry gets all the praise in the world from that. And then Draymond Green, instead of getting the praise for that, is like, oh, you're not even really that good of a defender. You're just in this era of small ball working. And it's like, he's the fucking reason that small ball is even as common of a fucking thing as it is. So what are you talking about? It's like, oh, you only thrive in this era of versatility. Bitch, he was thriving at the start before the era of versatility because he was the guy being versatile and it was working against the old school approach to things. God, I hate how much I have to fucking defend Draymond Green because I do not like him as a person at all. I find him very annoying, but that does not mean that he was an overrated basketball player. He is extremely underrated because people don't like him and they want to take his credit away because of that. And I really, really hate how much whether or not a player is liked changes their perception in terms of how good people think they are. Like, I do not like Draymond Green, but I'm not going to be blinded by this dislike and be like, oh, you know who's actually better? Brandon Bass. Fuck off. From Slam Dunkin' Donuts, I like the honeycomb highlighter Hornets jerseys. Well, that's your own damn fault. That's a terrible take. This is a take from S. The Pistons should trade for Kawhi Leonard if the Clippers blow it up around or before the trade deadline. It gives the Pistons a real shot, and Kawhi's proven to be healthier playing in last year's playoffs and only having a minor injury this year. Cade, Asar, Kawhi, Duren, Duncan/Holland as the fifth starter are finals favorites in the East and possibly could win the title if everything went perfect. Pretty sure a deal around Ivy and Tobias gets it done. I think anyone who's trading for Kawhi is desperate, in a position of desperation, and the Pistons are not in a position of desperation. They don't need to make a desperate move. And they also, if they're going to trade Jaden Ivey and Tobias Harris, if they're going to make a swing, they should make a swing for somebody who fits the timeline of Cade Cunningham. And it doesn't even need to be like fits the timeline super well. Like, you could trade for like someone who's 28, 29, 30. But Kawhi is what, 34 years old? Yeah, Kawhi is 34, and he would be 35 years old by the time the playoffs come around. I'm not even that high on Jaden Ivey, but I wouldn't trade a genuinely substantial young player asset for a 35-year-old on a team that's best player is like 23. Jalen Duren's like around that age too. Like, just no. Just in every possible way, no. From Brunsonian cult leader, if you are a team with real value to trade, trading a haul for a 30-plus-year-old star is almost always, if not always, a bad idea. If you only care about selling tickets, then I understand that logic, but giving up good young players and draft capital for the privilege of shortening your title window, cutting your depth and support you'd give that star, tying much of your money into one guy who historically says is probably a diva and will miss games, and leaving yourself without much when they retire or leave like Brooklyn and Phoenix did for KD or the Clippers did for Kawhi and PG, seems obviously stupid to me. The Rockets made their old man trade in the smartest way I've seen done that I can remember, because they gave up essentially nothing of value and kept the most important of their young core that got the second seed last year. So if KD retires or leaves, they're not screwed like Brooklyn or Phoenix were. And they did need Kevin Durant's skill set if they were going to win now. The value the Rockets gave should be market price, especially for anyone over like 20 or 32 to 33. That goes for any of the 30-plus stars that might get traded, including LeBron, AD, Kawhi, Kyrie, even Giannis. I don't know about that, and I'm glad my Knicks haven't given the asking price to Milwaukee for him so far. A single player is almost never able to do it completely on their own. Okay, but I'm very much baffled by you've kind of gone back and forth here on what exactly you're talking about. So are we talking about making this big swing to trade for just one guy? Or is this a team that is ready to go to another level when they bring this guy? Like, you really don't want your Knicks to trade for Giannis? Are you crazy? Because it's not like you're trading Jalen Brunson for him. It would either be Cat, OG, or Bridges. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense to me that you would not want to do that. Or even Giannis. You don't want Giannis on the Knicks? Are you crazy? Like, I get it if you'd have to trade everything besides for Jalen Brunson, but like, a single player almost is never able to get it complete done on their own. Yeah, Giannis wouldn't be on his own. He would have another top 10 player in the league on his team. Maybe I just misread that. Maybe I'm just dumb, but what? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. From alchemical, I can never fucking say your name properly. From Alchemic Toast is what I'm gonna say. This season, Maxey is better than Brunson. I mean, I would say objectively, he has been better than Jalen Brunson so far this year. It's just a matter of how much you buy into this being his legitimate ceiling. I mean, frankly, the only reason that his numbers are so much better is because he has to shoot the ball so much more. Like, if you swapped their positions, I imagine their stats would probably be pretty similar. If Brunson was leading the Sixers through this horrible shit that they're dealing with, or if Maxey was on this Knicks team, or he has Cat and the two wings on the perimeter who also score the ball quite a bit, then he wouldn't be averaging 32 or wherever the fuck he's at right now. So I can't get there. From Ron Sexual, bad timing, but CP3 is the best point guard of all time. Every team he went to, they've improved. Look at OKC or Houston, and you'll see that his playmaking is far better than anyone else's in the modern era, except for maybe Jokic. Curry is more of a shooting guard. Fucking God. No, he's not. His career assists per game average is 6, and he was always more of an off-ball talent where people like Draymond would do the playmaking for him, where Chris Paul has it at like 9+. You are the position you play. Steph Curry is a point guard, and he is over Chris Paul. But Chris has had it at 9+ with multiple seasons of 10+. Magic's dominance was mostly because he had the third best player of all time on the same team and relied heavily on his size and strength to score instead of real finesse. He was a great playmaker, but I'd still give CP3 the slight nod over Magic. First of all, this is entirely invalid. He relied too much on his size and strength. Oh no, I guess those points don't really count. No, that's irrelevant. That does not make it any less him being a good scorer. And like, I would say that, yeah, Chris Paul's a more skilled scorer. That doesn't matter. Who's better at putting the ball in the basket? I'd say they're both about equally good at it. And also, Magic is the only other player in NBA history who has come anywhere near mastering the sky hook besides for Kareem. And you're saying the other thing to discount Magic here is that he had the third best player of all time on the same team. Brother, do you know what numbers Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was putting up after like Magic's third season in the NBA? Yeah, in Magic's first season in the NBA, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was 32 years old. He averaged 25 points, 11 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 3.5 blocks. I'll just go first 3 years of Magic's career. And Magic is playing mostly shooting guard at this point. First 3 years, he averages 25, 10, 3.5 assists, and 3 blocks on 58.5% shooting, 75% from the line. I'll even be nice, and I won't count the years that he played when he was 40, even though they won a championship when Kareem was 40. Or wait, did they do that? Yeah, they did in 88. Yeah. But from Magic's fourth season to 1987, bro was averaging 21 points, 7 rebounds, 1.8 blocks, and 3 assists on 58% shooting. So Magic can't be the GOAT because for multiple championships, he had a guy who averaged 20 and 7. You know, that sounds ridiculous, right? The GOAT point guard, that is. Yeah, in 1988, the Lakers won a championship. I'll throw the last 2 playoffs. So 87 and 88, the Lakers win the title both of those years, while Kareem is averaging 16 points and 6 rebounds. One of those, he only averaged 21 points and 8 rebounds. 22 points and 8 rebounds. He was really good in that finals, to be fair. So he won finals MVP there. Although I would have given that to Magic, personally. But it's only fair because Magic should not have won Finals MVP in 1980. So no, only 2 of the championships of the 5 that Magic won, Kareem was like anywhere close to a peak Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So that's not true. That is not relevant. Him relying on his size, not relevant. Stephen Curry not playing point guard, not true, not relevant. And if you're valuing playmaking entirely on your assist average, that is not understanding playmaking. More of an off-ball talent. Do you recognize how impactful in playmaking being the off-ball talent that Stephen Curry is? Please go watch. It's a pretty recent video from Thinking Basketball that explains this better than I ever could. Stephen Curry is one of the 5 greatest playmakers in the history of the NBA because of his gravity off of the ball. So no, hard disagree on almost every front here. Chris Paul is one of my favorite players ever, and I think he is the 3rd greatest point guard of all time. But there is no question who the top 2 point guards of all time are. It is Steph and Magic. It is Steph and Magic, and then it's a whole nother tier below that for Isaiah Thomas or Chris Paul or Jason Kidd or Steve, whoever you think the 3rd best point guard of all time is. Magic and Steph are a whole nother level above them. Gonna have to disagree with you on that, bronzexual. From Nico Harrison, Wemby already has enough injuries that he no longer has GOAT potential. He still clearly has top 10 or maybe even top 5 potential if everything goes well, but his early career injuries will dampen his resume enough that he can't compete with LeBron on being young, and he won't be able to compete with Jordan in championships because of the era. If he ends up having a perfect prime and even leading to a dynasty, he will be top 5, but his potential GOAT convo is gone. I don't think his early injuries are a problem because he can't compete with LeBron on being young. It's a very weird way to say that, but I think what you mean is like being so good so early. My thing with the injuries, the reason that would hamper his GOAT potential is because it dramatically decreases the odds that he will have a prolonged NBA career. Like, my fears with them are my fears with his injuries are not like, oh no, the first 5 seasons of his career will not look as good as the first 5 seasons of LeBron's. Like, fucking whatever. That's not the most important thing. To me, what is always the most important thing is what you do in your peak. And like, yeah, I would agree. It feels pretty unlikely that Wemby will be the GOAT just because you do need longevity to be the GOAT to some degree. And I don't think he will, not to the degree that you need to. But him possibly having the best peak of all time, I still think is very much on the table. And honestly, that is a more interesting conversation to me because it is more limited in scope. It doesn't have to have a billion factors in it. It's just kind of like, yeah, who's better at their best? That is a more interesting conversation to me. And I do think Wemby could be the absolute best player that we have ever seen ever for a period of time. He might not do it for a decade. He almost certainly won't rack up 6 titles while he's doing it, but I still think his peak can be that good. Also, we've seen players have early career injuries and then end up bouncing back. Like, people thought Steph Curry was done before he became a superstar. So, like, I wouldn't invest too much into that. The only reason I'm a little bit more in that camp is just because he's fucking 7'7". This will be the last take of the video from Joe. Not sure if this has been said in here before, but if not, I really do think Steph and KD were more of an unstoppable duo than Shaq and Kobe. Other teams at least had a chance to somewhat compete when Shaq and Kobe played, but Steph and KD had so much space on that team that it was a wrap whenever they were healthy together. Yeah, I would agree with this. I'm going to read the rest of what you have to say, but like the unstoppability factor is the spacing of it all. The fact that Klay Thompson is on the floor with all of this going on. Like that is why they were more unstoppable. Like, I think if you had Draymond, Klay Thompson, and like Andre Iguodala, or who else was another key guy during that era. Regardless, like having another all-time great shooter on the floor just made it that much harder. Offensively, they were easily the best duo of all time. 2 of the top 4 scorers of all time, both in their primes, playing together just wasn't fair. Not to mention the talent surrounding them was so much better. It made them that much more dangerous. You didn't have to just worry about the 2 of them. You had to worry about Clay and like 5-ish role players who could give you buckets if you needed. It made it impossible to double them, which just makes it so much better. Thank God that the team disbanded because they had the league on lock when healthy. Yeah, I feel like that alternate reality does not get discussed enough, because if Kevin Durant fully did not care about the narrative around him and it was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep winning in Golden State, they probably could have won a further 3 championships from there. As obviously he would have had to take the year off with the Achilles tear, but after that, there's no reason why they could not have gone back to back after that, really. Like I don't think there is any team in the 2020s that is just clearly better than what the Warriors would have looked like if Kevin Durant was on the roster the whole time. Even an older Kevin Durant, even a more injured one, even a slower Kevin Durant, still, that's just so much better than what the Warriors dealt with after the fact. And they still managed to win a championship without the guy. So it only stands to reason that they could do 2 or 3 more with him. So yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you would like to join the Discord, that Patreon link is in the description below. And goodbye.